The twin suns of Nexus Prime cast long shadows across the landing platform as Jackson Rivers powered down his modified cargo hauler. 12 years. 12 long years since he'd last breathed the sweet, mineral-rich air of his childhood home. The familiar scent of crystalline dust and exotic flora hit him like a wave of memories, each one more bittersweet than the last. At 28, Jackson had grown into his frame, broad shoulders, calloused hands from years of mechanical work, and storm-gray eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's darker corners. His dark hair was longer now, tied back practically, and a small scar above his left eyebrow served as a reminder of the dangerous life he'd carved out among the Outer Rim colonies. The spaceport buzzed with activity. Merchants hawked their wares in a dozen different languages, while cargo loaders, both human and alien, moved with practiced efficiency. But Nexus Prime had changed. Where once stood simple prefabricated structures, now gleaming towers reached toward the violet sky. Progress, they called it. Jackson wasn't so sure. He shouldered his worn travel pack and made his way through the crowds, muscle memory guiding him toward the exit. That's when he saw her. She stood near the fountain at the center of the spaceport plaza, and Jackson's breath caught in his throat. Her skin held an opalescent quality that seemed to shift between silver and deep blue in the changing light, unmistakably Veiltar. But it was more than her otherworldly beauty that stopped him cold. It was the way she moved, the tilt of her head, the familiar grace that sent his heart racing with recognition. Zara? The name escaped his lips in a whisper. As if she'd heard him across the crowded plaza, she turned. Their eyes met, hers the deep purple of Nexus Prime's twilight sky, and time seemed to fold in on itself. The gangly alien girl who had been his closest friend, his protector, his first love, was gone. In her place stood a woman of breathtaking beauty and unmistakable power. Zara Nightwhisper had grown tall and elegant, her lithe form speaking of both grace and deadly strength. Her hair, once short and practical, now flowed like liquid starlight past her shoulders. She wore form-fitting clothing that seemed to be woven from shadow and moonbeams, traditional Veiltar garments that marked her as a warrior. But it was her smile that undid him completely. That same mischievous, knowing smile that had gotten them both into trouble countless times as children. "Hello, Jackson," she said, her voice carrying that musical quality unique to her people. She approached with fluid steps, and he found himself transfixed by the way the crowd seemed to part around her without even realizing it. "You've grown up. I could say the same about you." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Though I guess grown up doesn't quite cover it." She laughed, and the sound sent shivers down his spine. "You always were good with words. How long has it been?" 12 years, 4 months, and 16 days. The precision of his answer surprised them both. "Not that I was counting." Something flickered in her purple eyes, hurt, perhaps, or longing. "You left without saying goodbye." The accusation hung between them like a physical thing. Jackson ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from their childhood. "I was 16, Zara. My parents had just died, and the colony officials were shipping me off to relatives I'd never met. I barely had time to pack, let alone." "I know." Her voice was softer now, and she stepped closer. Close enough that he could smell her scent, something like night-blooming flowers and ozone. "I tried to find you before you left, but they'd already taken you to the transport." They stood there in the middle of the bustling spaceport, two people caught between past and present, while life flowed around them. Jackson found himself studying her face, cataloging the changes. The sharp cheekbones, the way her eyes seemed to hold depths of starlight, the small scar along her jawline that hadn't been there before. "What happened here?" he asked, gesturing to the scar. Her fingers touched the mark unconsciously. "Training accident. Veiltar warriors aren't made, Jackson. We're forged." "Warrior." He tested the word. It fit her, he realized. Even as children, Zara had always been the one to stand between him and trouble. Human children could be cruel to the few aliens living in the colony, and more than once she'd used her natural Veiltar abilities to send bullies running. I should have known. Should have known what? That you'd become something extraordinary. The compliment seemed to catch her off guard, and for a moment, he glimpsed the girl he'd known beneath the warrior's facade. Jackson, Zara Night Whisper. The voice boomed across the plaza, interrupting whatever she'd been about to say. They turned to see a group of human security officers approaching, their leader a heavy-set man with cold eyes. You're not supposed to be in the civilian areas without clearance. Zara's posture shifted subtly, and Jackson recognized the stance. She was preparing for trouble. Officer Garrett. I wasn't aware the spaceport was restricted. New regulations, Garrett replied, but his eyes were on Jackson. And you would be? Jackson Rivers. He straightened to his full height, meeting the man's stare. Born and raised on Nexus Prime. I have every right to be here. Something like recognition flickered across Garrett's face. Rivers. That name sounds familiar. My parents were Marcus and Elena Rivers. They died in the mining accident 12 years ago. Ah yes. Garrett's smile was unpleasant. The troublemakers. Well, Mr. Rivers, I hope you're not planning to follow in their footsteps. The words hit Jackson like a physical blow. His parents had been respected members of the community, not troublemakers. Before he could respond, Zara stepped forward, and the temperature around them seemed to drop. Officer Garrett, her voice carried a subtle threat that made the man's companions shift nervously. I believe you have other duties to attend to. For a moment, Jackson thought the man might push back. Then Garrett looked into Zara's eyes and apparently thought better of it. Just remember what I said, Night Whisper. New regulations. As the security team walked away, Jackson turned to Zara. What was that about? And what did he mean about my parents being troublemakers? Zara was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. How much do you know about why they died, Jackson? Mining accident. Tunnel collapse. Bad luck. He recited the official story, but even as he said it, doubts that had been growing for years crystallized into certainty. It wasn't an accident, was it? No, she said simply. It wasn't. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Jackson felt the world shift around him, everything he believed about his parents' death crumbling away. We need to talk, Zara continued, glancing around the crowded plaza. But not here. Too many ears. Where? Her smile returned, though it was tinged with sadness now. Do you remember the Crystal Caves? Our old hiding place. How could he forget? They'd spent countless hours exploring those caves as children, spinning stories about ancient civilizations and buried treasure. It had been their secret place, their sanctuary. Lead the way, he said. As they walked through the transformed streets of Nexus Prime, Jackson's mind raced with questions. His parents' death, Zara's mysterious presence, the security officer's strange behavior, it all felt connected somehow. But beneath the confusion and growing anger was something else, the undeniable rightness of being near Zara again. She moved beside him with that same protective awareness she'd always had, and despite everything that had changed, despite the years and the distance and the secrets yet to be revealed, walking with Zara Night Whisper felt like coming home. The crystal caves waited ahead, holding answers that would change everything. But for now, in this moment, Jackson was content to simply be near the girl who had once been his whole world, and who might just be his salvation. The crystal caves lay hidden beneath the northern mesa, just as Jackson remembered them. But where once he and Zara had needed climbing gear and determination to reach the entrance, she now moved with fluid grace that defied gravity itself. Her Veiltar abilities had grown far beyond the simple tricks she'd shown him as children. Still showing off, I see, Jackson said with a grin as Zara seemed to glide up the rocky face. Still jealous of my superior genetics, she teased back, extending a hand to help him up the final ledge. The moment their skin touched, an electric current seemed to pass between them, something more than mere attraction, though Jackson couldn't quite name what it was. The cave entrance was exactly as he remembered, a narrow opening between two crystalline formations that caught and refracted the light of Nexus Prime's twin suns. But as they stepped inside, Jackson gasped. What had once been a simple cavern was now transformed into something magical. Bioluminescent crystals lined the walls in intricate patterns, their soft blue-white light creating a constellation on the cave ceiling. Comfortable seating areas had been carved from the living rock, and a small pool of spring water reflected the crystal light like liquid starlight. It was beautiful, intimate, and clearly the work of years. "You've been busy," Jackson said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "I needed somewhere to think. Somewhere that felt like." She paused, color rising in her opalescent cheeks. "Somewhere that felt like us." The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Jackson moved closer, drawn by something deeper than memory. "How long have you been coming here?" "Since the day you left." Her purple eyes met his, and he saw years of pain there, carefully hidden but not quite concealed. "I came here that first night, after I couldn't find you at the transport station. I was so angry, so hurt. I may have done some damage to the rock formations." She gestured to what Jackson had assumed were natural formations, but now he could see the telltale signs of Veiltar energy work, too precise, too purposeful to be accidental. "Zara, I don't." She held up a hand, and he could see her warriors training in the gesture. "We have more important things to discuss than ancient history." But even as she said it, she settled onto one of the carved benches and patted the space beside her. When Jackson sat, careful to maintain a respectful distance, she laughed softly. "After all these years, you're still worried about propriety? After all these years, I'm still trying to figure out if you're going to disappear again." The words came out sharper than he'd intended, and Zara flinched as if struck. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "I never wanted to leave you, Jackson. You have to believe that." "Then why did you?" Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from the cave entrance. Zara was on her feet instantly, energy crackling around her fingers in a way that made Jackson's hair stand on end. But then a familiar voice called out. "Easy there, Starlight. It's just me." A man emerged from the tunnel, human, with the kind of roguish good looks that belonged in adventure holos. His sandy hair was artfully tousled, and his smile could have charmed the credits from a Ferengis vault. Jackson felt an immediate and irrational spike of jealousy. "Nico Stardust," the man said, extending a hand to Jackson. "And you must be the famous Jackson Rivers. I've heard so much about you." "Have you now?" Jackson shook the offered hand, noting the man's firm grip and the calculating look in his green eyes. "Nico is an information broker," Zara explained, settling back onto the bench but keeping some distance from Jackson now. "He's also an old friend." "How old?" The question slipped out before Jackson could stop it, earning him amused looks from both Zara and Nico. "Not that kind of friend," Nico said with a grin. "Though I certainly tried." "Zara has specific tastes." The way Zara's cheeks darkened told Jackson more than he wanted to know about those specific tastes. He tried to push down the surge of possessiveness that rose in his chest. "What kind of information do you broker?" Jackson asked, changing the subject. "The kind that keeps people alive." Nico's expression grew serious. "Speaking of which, you've stirred up quite the hornet's nest by coming back, my friend. There are some very powerful people who would prefer you stayed away. Let me guess, the same people who killed my parents." Nico whistled low. "So you do know. That makes this easier." He pulled out a small device that projected a holographic display. "Your parents stumbled onto something big, Jackson. Something that certain members of the colonial administration would kill to keep secret." "What kind of something?" The kind that proves humans and Veiltar have a lot more in common than anyone wants to admit. Before Jackson could ask for clarification, another voice spoke from the cave entrance, this one unmistakably Veiltar, with that musical quality that marked the species. Brother Nico speaks truth, but only partial truth. The woman who entered was clearly related to Zara, the same opalescent skin, the same purple eyes, but where Zara radiated controlled power, this newcomer seemed to glow with an inner light that spoke of different abilities entirely. Vera, Zara said, rising to embrace the other woman. I didn't expect you so soon. The current spoke of urgency, Vera replied, her gaze finding Jackson. And of him. Jackson felt exposed under that piercing stare, as if Vera could see straight through to his soul. Let me guess, another old friend? My sister, Zara said. Vera Moonstone. She's a healer, but she also has other gifts. I see the threads that bind all things, Vera said simply. And your thread, Jackson Rivers, burns brighter than any I have witnessed. What's that supposed to mean? Instead of answering directly, Vera moved to the small pool of water. She placed her hands on the surface, and the water began to glow with soft silver light. Images formed in the luminescence, swirling patterns that gradually resolved into recognizable shapes. Long ago, Vera said, her voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller, when both our peoples were young, we were not strangers. We walked the same worlds, shared the same dreams, loved across the boundaries of species. The images in the water showed scenes of impossible beauty, cities that blended human architecture with Veiltar bioengineering, gardens where children of both species played together, couples whose love transcended physical differences. The ancient archives speak of soul bonds, Vera continued. Connections that could form between individuals of different species, linking them across space and time. Such bonds were rare, precious, and... She looked directly at Jackson and Zara. Unmistakable to those who knew how to see. Jackson felt his breath catch. You're saying that Zara and I are bonded in ways that most cannot comprehend, Vera finished. It is why she could never truly leave you, why she felt your pain across the galaxy, why you both knew instantly when you saw each other again. The revelation should have been shocking, but instead it felt like confirmation of something Jackson had always known but never had words for. He looked at Zara, who was staring at the images in the water with wonder and fear warring in her expression. Is that why you came back? She asked quietly. Because you felt something calling you? Jackson considered lying, making up some story about wanting closure or seeking justice for his parents. But looking into those purple eyes, he found he couldn't. I've been dreaming about you for years, he admitted. About this place. About coming home. I told myself it was just nostalgia, but... He reached for her hand again. 3 months ago, something changed. I started having dreams so vivid they felt like memories. Dreams of you in danger, calling for help. Zara's fingers tightened around his. 3 months ago was when I discovered the truth about your parents' deaths. When I started actively investigating instead of just mourning. The bond grows stronger during times of emotional intensity, Vera explained. Fear, love, anger, all serve to strengthen the connection. Which brings us to why I'm here, Nico interrupted, his expression grim. Someone's been asking questions about you, Jackson. Dangerous questions. And they're not being subtle about it. Who? Tobias Ashford and his people. He's the colonial administrator who took over after your parents died. Word is, he's got some very unfriendly visitors from off-world, and they're all very interested in what you might know about your father's research. Jackson's blood ran cold. What research? Zara and Vera exchanged a look that spoke of shared knowledge and difficult decisions. Your father found proof, Zara said finally. Archaeological evidence that humans and Veiltar weren't just ancient allies, we share common genetic markers. We're essentially cousins, separated by millennia of evolution on different worlds. That's impossible. Is it? Vera gestured to the images still swirling in the water. How else do you explain the soul bonds? The genetic compatibility? The way our technologies complement each other so perfectly. Jackson stared at the ancient scenes playing out in the magical water, his world reshaping itself around this new reality. And someone killed my parents to keep this secret? Certain factions on both sides have built their power on the idea that our species are fundamentally different, Nico explained. Proof of common ancestry would undermine a lot of carefully constructed political structures. But it's more than politics, Zara added, her hand still clasped in Jackson's. If the truth comes out, if people understand what we really are to each other. She looked at him, and he saw his own feelings reflected in her eyes. Everything changes. The weight of it settled over Jackson like a heavy cloak. His parents hadn't died in an accident, they'd been murdered to protect a lie. And now, just by returning home, he'd painted a target on both their backs. But looking at Zara, feeling the rightness of her hand in his, seeing the way the crystal light played across her beautiful face, Jackson found he didn't care about the danger. So what do we do now? Vera smiled, and for the first time since entering the cave, she looked less like a mystical healer and more like Zara's mischievous sister. Now we show them exactly why soul-bonded pairs were once the most feared warriors in the galaxy. The attack came at dawn. Jackson woke to the sound of Zara's sharp intake of breath, her hand pressed against his chest where they'd fallen asleep curled together on the makeshift bed of crystal formations. Her purple eyes were wide with alarm, and energy crackled around her fingertips in warning patterns he remembered from their childhood. Someone's in the caves, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Moving fast. Not human. Before Jackson could respond, Vera appeared at their sleeping alcove, her usually serene expression tight with urgency. Sister, we need to move. Now. What's happening? Nico emerged from his own resting spot, already reaching for the energy pistol at his hip. Luna Silverwing, Vera said, and Zara's face went pale. She's found us. The name meant nothing to Jackson, but the way both sisters reacted told him everything he needed to know. Friend of yours? Assassin, Zara replied grimly, already moving to gather their supplies. Rogue Veil Tar who sells her skills to the highest bidder. If she's here, it means Ashford is serious about silencing you. A sound echoed through the caves, not quite footsteps, more like whispers of air displacement. Whatever was coming moved with inhuman grace and speed. There's another way out, Zara said, leading them toward a narrow passage Jackson hadn't noticed before. But we need to reach it before. The cave entrance exploded inward in a shower of crystal fragments. Through the glittering debris stepped a figure that made Jackson's breath catch. Where Zara and Vera were beautiful in their alien grace, this newcomer was terrifying in hers. Luna Silverwing's skin held the same opalescent quality as other Veiltar, but hers seemed to shift between silver and deep red, like fresh blood under moonlight. Her eyes were pure black, and when she smiled, Jackson saw teeth that had been filed to points. Little Zara Night Whisper, Luna purred, her musical voice carrying undertones of violence. Still playing protector to lost human children, I see. Luna. Zara stepped forward, placing herself between the assassin and Jackson. Energy wreathed her hands like starfire. This doesn't have to be difficult. Oh, but I want it to be difficult. Luna's laugh was like breaking glass. Ashford only paid me to kill the human. He said nothing about making it quick. She moved faster than Jackson's eyes could follow, but Zara was ready. The two Veiltar collided in the center of the cave, energy crackling between them as they grappled. Jackson had seen Zara's abilities as children, but this was something else entirely. She fought with lethal precision, every movement a perfect blend of martial arts and energy manipulation. But Luna was older, more experienced, and utterly ruthless. Jackson. Nico grabbed his arm. We need to go. I'm not leaving her. You're not helping her by staying. Vera added, her own hands beginning to glow with healing energy as she prepared to support her sister. The passage, now. Reluctantly, Jackson allowed himself to be pulled toward the narrow opening. But as they reached it, Luna's voice rang out behind them. "Running won't save you, human. I know you're sent now. I'll hunt you across the galaxy if necessary." Zara's reply was lost in the sound of another energy discharge, and then they were running through darkness, following passages that seemed to stretch endlessly into the heart of the mesa. "Where does this lead?" Jackson gasped as they ran. "Old mining tunnels," Nico replied. "They connect to the research facility where your parents worked." The mention of his parents sent a chill through Jackson that had nothing to do with the cool cave air. "The facility is still operational?" "Officially? No. Unofficially." Vera's voice was strained with worry for her sister. "It's where Ashford conducts his more questionable research." They emerged from the tunnels into artificial light that hurt Jackson's eyes after the gentle glow of the crystal caves. The research facility was larger than he remembered from childhood visits, with new sections that spoke of significant expansion over the years. "This way," Nico said, leading them through corridors lined with humming machinery. "I have a contact here who—" He stopped abruptly as a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead. Tobias Ashford looked exactly as Jackson remembered him, tall, pale, with the kind of cold smile that never reached his eyes. But where once he'd been merely a minor colonial official, now he radiated the confidence of real power. "Jackson Rivers," Ashford said, his voice carrying false warmth. "Welcome home. Though I must say, you've caused quite a stir with your return." "Ashford." Jackson stepped forward, anger overriding caution. "I know what you did to my parents." "Do you?" Ashford's smile widened. "I wonder if you truly understand the scope of what Marcus and Elena discovered. Would you like to see?" Without waiting for an answer, Ashford gestured, and the walls around them lit up with holographic displays. Archaeological data, genetic analyses, star charts showing migration patterns, all of it painting a picture that took Jackson's breath away. "Your parents weren't just researchers," Ashford continued conversationally. "They were archaeologists who stumbled onto the greatest secret in galactic history. Humans and Veiltar aren't just related species, we're the same species, separated by an ancient diaspora." The holographic displays shifted, showing what appeared to be a massive evacuation. Ships lifting off from a dying world, scattering across the galaxy to seed new colonies. "Millennia ago, environmental catastrophe struck our homeworld. Some of our people fled to worlds with harsh conditions, developing the abilities you see in modern Veiltar. Others settled on gentler planets, becoming what you call humans. But the genetic markers remain. The potential for reunion." Jackson stared at the evidence, his worldview reshaping itself yet again. "If this is true, why hide it? Why kill for it?" "Because unity threatens control," Vera said softly. "If humans and Veiltar realized their true relationship." "Exactly." Ashford's expression turned cold. "Separate, our species can be managed, controlled, played against each other for profit. Together." He shrugged. "Well, that would complicate certain business arrangements." "You bastard." Jackson started forward, but Nico caught his arm. "Easy," his friend murmured. "We're outnumbered here." As if summoned by his words, armed guards emerged from concealment around the chamber. Humans in tactical gear, weapons trained on the small group. "I'm afraid your friends are correct," Ashford said. "You see, Mr. Rivers, your parents made a critical error. They believed truth was more important than stability. I've spent 12 years building a carefully balanced system of cooperation and controlled conflict between our species. I won't let their idealistic nonsense destroy that." "And Zara?" Jackson asked, his heart hammering with fear for her safety. "The Night Whisper girl? Luna will handle her." Such a waste, she could have been useful if she'd been willing to see reason. Rage exploded through Jackson, hot and pure and unlike anything he'd ever felt. But with it came something else, a strange doubling of sensation, as if he was experiencing emotions that weren't entirely his own. Through the bond Vera had described, he could feel Zara's presence, distant but unmistakable. She was hurt but alive, still fighting. And she could feel him too. The realization hit him like lightning. The soul bond wasn't just emotional, it was a genuine psychic connection. And if Vera was right about bonded pairs being formidable warriors. "You know what your problem is, Ashford?" Jackson said, forcing his voice to remain calm even as power he didn't understand began building in his chest. "Enlighten me. You never understood what my parents really discovered. It wasn't just about genetics or ancient history." Jackson smiled, and felt Zara's fierce joy echo through their bond as she realized what he was planning. It was about what happens when bonded pairs stop holding back. The lights in the facility flickered as energy began to build, not just from Jackson, but from somewhere else entirely. Through their connection, he and Zara were drawing on each other's strength, amplifying abilities neither had known they possessed. "Impossible," Ashford breathed. "Humans don't have." His words were cut off as every piece of electronic equipment in the chamber began to overload. Sparks flew from control panels, and the holographic displays dissolved into static. The guards raised their weapons, but their targeting systems were failing, their communications dead. Through the chaos, a new sound echoed through the facility, the distinctive hum of Veiltar energy weapons, but amplified beyond anything Jackson had ever heard. Zara was coming, and she was bringing the full fury of their awakened bond with her. "This isn't over, Rivers," Ashford snarled, backing toward an emergency exit. "You have no idea what forces you're playing with." "Neither do you," Jackson replied, feeling Zara's presence growing stronger by the moment. "But we're about to find out." As alarms wailed throughout the facility and Ashford fled with his guards, Jackson reached out through the bond that connected him to the woman he'd loved since childhood. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The age of secrets was ending. The age of unity was about to begin. And somewhere in the distance, getting closer by the heartbeat, Zara Nightwhisper was coming home.